Hi, this is Six Peppers for CardRunners.com. I'm bringing you what I believe to be the first Rush Poker Card Runners video. This is a different format of poker, and as such, we need to address it. I thought I'd just, I haven't had much time to play it myself, but I thought just intuitively I would see what I could do to kind of learn the differences and adjust accordingly. There are some really important factors going on here. Rush Poker is, if you haven't seen the tutorial, you can go to Full Tilt's website and check it out. It definitely helps you understand it a bit. It is where, as soon as you choose to not play your hand, you are moved to another table where you will start another hand pretty much immediately. So the only real waiting time is going to be for it to basically fold around to your action, or for once going on post flop and stuff for other people to act, and then it's pretty much your turn to act really quick, as opposed to when you're multi-tabling. Each table really you're basically not acting probably like 80% of the time about. So it takes away that 80% of not doing anything and basically makes it like you are multi-tabling, but at one table. The only thing is, because it's drawing from a player pool, and it's randomizing your seating, you're in a different situation every single hand. It's not very similar as to like the last orbit where you played with these people in these positions. You're in very different situations every hand. You don't know what position you're going to be dealt into. You're not always going to go from the button to the cutoff to the hijack. Um, but I think really what this does is uh, it makes you should be tougher to play against, because your opponents aren't going to know how you have been playing and how to react to what you're doing. So it's really going to make um, I think it makes your raises and three bets a lot more respectable. And the reason is, at least at $50 people aren't really three betting light here, so they have to go on the principle that the average opponent isn't going to three bet bluff very frequently here, so I should play somewhat straightforward. But you can go on the principle that they they have to assume you're an average player for the most part, because you're mainly playing with people for the first time. It's like the first hand over and over again. You will start to get some familiar faces, and taking notes is going to become very important, even more than really if you were playing with the same people over and over, because since you only get one sample hand, that one hand you're going to have to use to judge them maybe later on if you just run into the same person again in the next hand. So it's pretty important to take notes, and what I found was really important is that as soon as you enter a hand with someone, to just open up their note box, because as soon as the hand ends, you're going to lose the ability to make a note on them. So let's say you see a flop heads up with an opponent, open up their note box right away. Even if you end up putting nothing in that, you can close it out. But just open up the note box and getting ready to type a note in there will prepare you to kind of learn something about them and move on. And you'll see even a few times here that I missed the opportunity to make notes on players because I didn't open up the note box right away. Let's go ahead and just dive into the action. So you're going to see me playing three tables, and I don't know how many tables you're allowed to play up to, but you can open up many instances of the same basic player pool. This is all at 50 cent $1, which is right now the highest they offer Rush Poker at. Hold on, turn off that. Sorry. Um, yeah, I'm supposed to. I was listening to music while I was playing this. Always keeps me a little calm. So already you can see things are going faster than usual. Here I click the auto fold button and I'm moving to another table. Uh, and here I've three bet kings. You're gonna find, as a common theme really in Rush Poker, I'm not gonna really do any slow playing. And while stack sizes are always important, I will be kind of making more aggressive plays where stack sizes might not be so optimal for an aggressive play. For instance, like 200 big blinds deep, you might consider flatting kings in some situations, just because you're gonna want to play in post flop and find that you're gonna extract more value. Here, I'm just gonna go with the principle that three betting, especially I mean to a min raise and all that stuff, three betting, I'm going to get my value in pre-flop, and I'll still be able to extract value post-flop in different situations and play the hand pretty well without really being put to too many tests or worrying about being outplayed or anything like that. So with kings, I see the flop 10-10-6. Really not worried about anyone having a 10 and it's really hard to have a full house. So I'm pretty confident with my hand at this point, and I'm expecting to get a lot of value from pocket pairs between sevens and queens here. So I'm just gonna bet into two people and see what happens on the top table. So we'll do top table, table one, right table, table two, and bottom table, table three. Table one, I flat a isolate raise out of position with fours here, and I think this is fine. A lot of times you'll have other people coming along with you, and you'll get good value out of set mining. Even though the razor isn't full stacked, I think it's still okay. And with a board like this, I'm just gonna check fold, not really looking to do anything too crazy at this point. I've flopped a set of threes on table two, and as you can see, I just folded a couple of hands on the bottom table, table three, and I'm really not going to go into any details about hands that I fold, but there are going to be situations where I'm going to open a few more hands than maybe I would do at a regular $57 table, and I'll talk about those. So when the opponent bets four, I'm just looking to inflate the pot. Right now, I have a really strong hand and really no reason to slow play. With king queen offsuit on the button, I folded to a short stack open. I would three bet a full stack player, and I would call if he had a little bit more, I think. But I think it was just a really awkward stack size, so I elected to just muck king queen offsuit to middle position open there. And here I'm just folding everything out. That's the beauty of this game, is that you're basically just going to fold until you see a hand that you're ready to play, and then you're going to go from there. So I think 4-6 suited, this is a really good opportunity to 3-bet. You know, nobody here really knows who I am. At this point, I have to just assume that, and it's going to be really tough for him to play out of position with most of his range. And again, people at 50 cent $1, I believe, are going to fold too much to 3-bets and give you too much respect, and that's just based on the whole principle that they're believing that I'm just another person 50 cent $1 that really isn't going to play back as loose as I actually am. So with king 7 suited here, I'm going to 3-bet it again. The reason I folded, I was going to 3-bet. I think it's a good hand and spot to do it because it looks really strong and the range is certainly wide enough that I'll get enough folds. But when the other person came into the pot, their stack was really awkward, so that if I 3-bet, I might have to call their shove. So I thought it actually became a losing play at that point to 3-bet because that player came into the pot with a weird stack size. Table 2, I open ace queen suited on the button, obviously really strong hand. And on table 1, I'm gonna elect to 3-bet this. I think people are opening too much from the small blind at lower stakes, and especially at Rush Poker. I heard one comment on 2+2 over the 2 days that it's been out that the blind wars get a lot more intense, and I believe that to be true, just because people generally, you don't want to open a good player's big blind if you're in the small blind with a lot of hands. But since no one really knows anyone, they're just going to kind of open maybe the same amount of hands they would on the button in the small blind. And that's going to really create a good opportunity for me in the big blind, because I know how to kick someone's butt if they're playing that loose from the small blind against me. So we got a lot of hands going on here. I'm going to 3-bet Jack 10 offsuit here, and I'm expecting to get tons of folds here. Their range is wide, and I don't think they're really calling appropriately. And I see bet ace queen suited. I think my hand is actually the best hand still. I don't really know what he's check calling with, but my one note on this player is that he played top pair passively. So I'm not really sure what to think of my hand. Maybe I'm just trying to get the show down, but I think I have some opportunities to turn this hand into a bluff later on. And the river really runs out in a good way for me to bluff at it, because if he had a pair, it's unlikely that he had a big pair, so he probably doesn't have a a big heart, and if he has a big heart, I think he's just gonna bet pretty big for value. He leads into me like half pot, kind of smallish. Like I have the six of hearts, please call. Is kind of what he's really portraying here. So I think just making a nice size raise to just kind of push him off of some one pair hands or some other weaker hearts. I think it'll work here a ton of the time. So just to risk $16 to win 16, it only has to work 50% of the time. Seems like a good idea. I think I make it 16. 8-9 offsuit in the cutoff. It's debatable whether I want to open this or fold it. I think I could have three bet it there actually, and then I opened king queen suited and took it down. So yeah, you fall a little bit behind when you start to take notes, but it's still important. And behind is a relative term because quick folding only gets you to the next hand faster. So if you need to take a moment to not quick fold to make notes, then do it. Wait on the going to the next hand and just take the notes and then move on to the next hand. As you can see, we're getting tons of hands in here pretty fast. Things are happening rapidly. You're going to want to make sure you're not tilting, because if you're tilting and playing this, you are going to be out of money really fast. I've already talked to a friend who said he was trying to play 45-30. I think that's way too loose. What you really need to be doing is starting to overvalue position and take all of those middle okay cards that you used to fold or maybe call open raises with and just start turning them into bluffs. And that'll create what you can kind of see here on table 3, my 12% 3-bet, which usually is maybe 6 or 7%. So I'm really gonna bump up my 3-bet stat in position and versus steals in the blinds. I'm gonna just bump that up and expect people to play kind of poorly really towards it at 50 cent $1. I just really don't think that they're playing it very well. They're set minded and giving up tons of the time. Table 1, I'm in an interesting spot. I think this is a good spot to 4-bet bluff. Now remember, like I could 4-bet bluff 10 times in a row at rush poker and no one would know that I'm 4-bet bluffing 10 times in a row. And that's really awesome. It really makes it the first time, they always say 4-bet bluff the first time. It means that every time is almost the first time. So you really can make a lot of 4-bet bluffs, a lot more than you used to, I think. And so far, the results for me have been just great, getting tons of folds and really kind of just owning people if they call and really just not getting very many hands shoved in at all. So with $6 to call, I'm looking at either calling or 3-betting or folding here, obviously, or 4-betting or folding, sorry. I really think that it's close between calling and 4-betting. I think I can call and get a little bit of value by outplaying him post flop, even though my hand is so weak. Or I could just 4-bet it here and really find out if he has a good hand. The reason I don't want to 4-bet though is really because his stack size is a little bit shorter. If he had a full 100 big blinds, I think making it 25 right here, 24 actually, would be just perfect to really put him in a tough spot where they want to shove all in or fold. But with only 80, starting at 85 big blinds, I think he'll shove in a little bit wider, and that just makes it a little bit more different. He certainly can he can be bluffing here, and I think a lot of people are either bluffing or, they're going to be raising hands that are good, but not good enough to go all in with. So a lot of hands that'll fold. But obviously, at this point, I'm expecting him to have me beat. But I have position in a marginal hand. It's certainly close. I think just on this board, it's completely dry, and a lot of people are c-betting the king high board. He kind of bet smallish, so I'm really thinking he's just kind of c-betting with ace jack, ace queen, and most people are gonna give respect to this raise, even though at higher stakes and versus good players, this can be transparent as just always a bluff or something like that. He has to have ace king, which he never has because he 4-bets preflop and stuff like that. But here, I just think the transparency doesn't matter at all because the player is going to play straightforward to this. They're going to fold their crappy hands, and they're going to shove all in with their ace, king, and aces. With queens and jacks, they might call, they might raise, they might fold. That's all a little bit up in the air. But what I'm saying is that there's enough hands that aren't queens, jacks, ace, king, or aces that I can make this raise here and expect to turn a profit. I'm only risking $28 to win a pot size of 17 plus 9, $26. So I think I'm looking to just exploit the fact that he's folding tons. Kind of a red line move, I guess is what you'd call it. With 6-7 suited, I'm going to call and look to see a flop in position. Slightly deep. And he did fold to the raise, so it worked. Definitely opening all pocket pairs from all positions. So I call on table 2. You could raise, you could call this board. I think it's a kind of dry board where if people have an overpair or something, they're going to generally call a flop raise, even out of position. And that's going to put me in a tough decision whether to bluff the turn if I miss. And it's also going to inflate the pot where he could ship in and kind of push me off of my draw. So I'm thinking that the best play on the flop is really just to call, see a turn, see if I can make my draw, or see what scare cards might come that I could try and bluff them off of their hand. I think the 8's a really interesting turn card because, while it's not statistically likely that I have an 8, I think, again, players are just going to play kind of straightforward, like, oh, he's raising the 8 turn. They're not going to really say, oh, well, it's hard for him to have an 8. They're going to say, well, he probably has like an 8 or a full house or something here. They're really going to, I think, give a little bit too much respect. They might get stubborn with big pocket pairs, but still they have to have big pocket pairs in order for that to work. And they're really still, even with a double barrel here, they have some overpairs, but not even like aces and kings very often. So I 3x this, and also if I am called, I still have a lot of equity going to the river, and I have maybe a little bit of bluff opportunity on maybe some ace and king turns and stuff like that. So I think this is just another really good spot to turn my hand into a bluff, and I've made a raise such that if he shoves all in, I believe I can make a pretty easy fold. I'm not really going to be getting odds on a paired board to try and make a straight by the river, especially with the 2 flush turn. So really, my hand kind of turned into nothing really, and I turned that nothing into a bluff. And it worked. So with 4s, I'm really just done with the hand. Not a lot of equity. Not really expecting anyone to fold. A lot of marginal hands, especially once it gets checked around the flop. I think either of these players can easily have an ace or some sort of hand that would call a turn bet. So I'm just giving up on it. And here I see that this guy checks the second nuts on the river for really no reason at all. And this person has 2 pair. So really, I was just with a couple of passive people. I didn't even realize this person had 2 pair. So yeah, I'm going to make a note on Shadow, and I'm going to call him a bad player because I think his defend pre-flop was bad, and his river check didn't really make any sense since it was unlikely really anyone had a good hand there. I think he was just playing all sorts of passively for really no reason without thinking about it. Yeah, so keeping a fast pace, keeping moving on to the next hand. I think this game almost encourages you to bluff. At least for me, maybe a little, just because it's like hand. You get a hand, next hand, next hand, next hand. Yeah. So the slowest time you'll have is when you're in the big blind and you're waiting for someone to raise before you can click the quick fold button. I think that's kind of interesting, but you have to do it because you can't just leave the hand. You can't just fold your big blind. It could be limped around and stuff like that. I like to make it 3.5 in early position, even though this is kind of not early position. I'm still making it 3.5 there. With Queen 8 suited, I think this is a fine raise. Again, I think the best thing to do here is really to play more hands in position than you normally would, and play them more aggressively than you normally would. I think that's really where you're going to get the maximum value from what Rush Poker is offering you, which is really random situations. Truly randomized poker. Although I don't know how they randomize it. So Coach 2s I know as a higher stakes regular. Like 2-4 and 3-6. I've seen him a couple of times. So I think this is a pretty good spot to make a 4-bet bluff. He might know me, he might not, but either way you look at it, I don't think he's really going to be calling here very often, and he's only going to be shipping the top of his range. He's really still he's still going to have a tough time shipping ace queen and tens and nines and stuff like that if he even three bets those hands. So I think it's a really good spot to just throw in a four bet and expect to see 55-60% folds here. Probably even more than that. Probably like 66 to 70% folds. I'm going to take a quick break. All right, moving back into this. Let's go. So the tilt issue is definitely going to be larger here because people are they're unaware of all their opponents and they're unsure. If they lose like the previous hand, we're not really going to know that they're tilting. So I think you should just assume that people, especially people that aren't full stacked or higher than full stacked, are going to be a little bit more prone to tilting than other people. So you should keep that in mind in like how you are kind of playing back at people are expecting them. So here on table 3, I make a semi-unorthodox 3-bet with ace-queen suited. I think a lot of people would flatten this situation, but I am going strictly for the pre-flop value and using the theory that most players are horrible post-flop. So I think this really opens up a really good situation, both pre-flop and post-flop, to kind of extract value here pre-flop, get a ton of folds. Also, just seeing a flop in position, I think people are going to set mine too often, and then just check fold tons of flops in 3-bet pots. King 10 offsuit on table 1 is really close to an open. I elected to fold it there. If I was one spot over to the left, I think it's open for certain. And here with ace 10, I would definitely open in that situation if it was folded to me. As you can see, lots of quick folding going on here. Seeing a lot of crappy hands, and that's going to happen sometimes. It's really nice to just be able to push through those. With ace-8 suited, I'm making what you would certainly call as a loose raise in early position, but again, I'm using the randomness factor to kind of prepare myself to play aggressively. I think kind of just opening early position versus a bunch of kind of unknown players, I think I could make this hand look like aces and make people believe that often enough that I'll be able to get tons and tons of folds by barreling or 3-barreling lots of different boards. So with the ace as kind of a card removal and being able to read the board properly and use that to my advantage, I elect to open the hand. If you feel less comfortable doing that, there's certainly nothing wrong with folding here. I just think there is a little bit of inherent value when this is essentially my first hand at the table and no one's really going to know how I'm playing. I do see Acid Grinder a few times in this video, I think. So, yeah. So I get check called. Their range at this point, I gotta imagine, are pocket pairs. And maybe ace-king or ace-queen. Most likely, though, pocket pairs, between 2 and really like jacks, maybe queens. Either way, I think I can get most of those hands to fold. Not all of them, but I can get most of them to fold with a turn bet here. So I elect to bet. Even 8s, I think, might be folding this turn because my hand just looks like jacks, queens, kings, aces. And I think people have to believe that. So I do get the turn fold, and we move on to the next hand. Here, Coach Twos is back. I know McShove is a pretty good player, I believe. With queens on table 2, I am just going to look to get in this half stack right away. Even though sometimes I will be beat if this person shoves all in, I think it's just more important to get the value in pre. And on table 1, I elect to just give up out of position when I flop absolutely nothing. Just really not sure how my opponent's going to play, and I don't really want to get floated or kind of outplayed or anything like that. So Queen Jack suited is another hand where it really isn't very powerful usually, but again, when you can turn it into a bluff more often, you can play a couple more hands. I am going to be out of position, but I am going to have 2 overs to the board a lot of the time, or possible flush and straight draws, which I'm going to be able to play aggressively. Sorry about that phone call. All right, let's keep going. So here's a really good spot on table one. Under the gun raise in middle position, call. We are over to or about 200 big blinds deep, and they this is going to look like a very believable three bet. Um, no one's seen me really three bet in the past. I've never played with either of these players, as far as I know. I think my hand's going to look pretty strong here. Um, so I elected to he four bets and I just used the quick fold button. I don't really need to sit around. I'm not going to be shoving it in or calling that. He put in, oh, it was a huge four bet. I have to imagine that his range there is really, really strong. So I think overall it's a pretty solid play. Just ran into the top of his range, which you're going to do a fair bit of the time. On table three, I have a gut shot and two overs as the pre-flop raiser. I'm going to fire into this, even though it's kind of a crappy board. It's kind of an interesting spot that I get into here. Also, I've raised on table two, and I'm gonna c-bet this board into the blinds. I think they're gonna have a tough time playing with a lot of their range. So I turn a straight draw, but when this guy cold calls my raise, I really feel like his hand is really strong. So the last thing I want to do is bet, have him shove all in, and be forced to fold what is about 25% equity. I got 8 outs, one card to come, so something like that, right? Maybe a little less, 20%. Um, I believe that I can get his whole stack if I make my draw. If I make a jack, so 4 outs, I'm always getting a stack. And then the other 4 outs, I'm getting maybe half of it or something. So I elect to check call with the sole intention of just shoving if I make my hand and checking if I miss. Looking at the odds, it's really not the greatest situation, but I think it is plus EV. It's really, really close. It could be a little spewy as a call. And then I check this river. He shoves all in, and I fold. With the ace river, I've made top pair, but the three flush did come. I once check to, I am definitely gonna bet for value, kind of small, and then my opponent kind of like insta shoves, and it's a pretty easy fold. I think he has a flush here, or a straight, or a set most of the time, but just most of the time a flush, and really can't call. On table one, I get into a pretty interesting spot. I don't know how to perceive this spot, because if I were in his spot, I would definitely bluff this turn a fair bit, especially if I called the flop like King Jack, 10 Jack, something like that. So I'm just betting for value on table one. I'm probably gonna check call most rivers or make a smallish value bet depending on kind of what cards come. Um, but I get raised, and I think it's a really kind of interesting spot. I think if I have ace queen, I might be going with my hand here. But with king queen, just the fact that he could be raising ace queen for some reason, or maybe kings or aces or something, I like to just muck after thinking about it for a while. On I start thinking about this hand, and then I actually I kind of ignore the other two tables, and that ends up costing me, well, maybe not, but I end up timing out down here. I think, you know, I just open up his note box and trying to get a idea of maybe what I should do. I end up timing out, which I think is fine. I was probably gonna fold, and then I time out down here. But middle pair, definitely strong enough to continue blind versus blind, even though I timed out. The turn, I don't think he's gonna barrel this turn really, and there's a lot of hands he can have that have draws. So I just elect to lead this turn, even if it looks a little transparent or something. I think he might call with the queen anyways, and he'll call with a few draws, and some weaker jacks. So I think just leading the turn here. I meant to, yeah, that's right. I misfired $1. I meant to fire like 13, and he folds. So he really didn't have much. I thought at the time I was like, oh, maybe he'll bluff raise, if he doesn't have anything. So the $1 bet maybe could have been to induce a bluff raise, but really it was just a misclick. On table one, my favorite hand is suited king. I like the 3-bet squeeze, an early position raise, semi-deep stack. Again, just putting pressure on in position, I think, is just going to really prove to be profitable at these stakes in this situation because we're playing different tables every time. With the ace high flop, I think I can kind of rep the ace, but I don't need to bet too big because they're gonna believe me no matter really what I bet here. And if they have an ace, they're gonna call because that's what they call pre-flop for. So I bet 23 into 32, and I think 24, 25. Those are all fine numbers, but just bringing it down a couple dollars can save you because they're gonna play pretty straightforward. On table one, I see bet the queen 5-2 board. The turn pairs the queen, which you might think is a bad card to bluff, but really, I don't see my opponent having a queen all that often, and I think they're going to fold most hands that don't have a queen in it. Um, maybe I just elected to check behind. I don't know. I still think that betting the turn, checking the turn, it's a really close spot that a lot of people get used to checking back and kind of giving up the hand, but there could be a lot of merit in betting that turn. Maybe with a couple of other hands rather than Jack 10. A couple like ace high hands or kind of hands that have like like one flush card in it. Like the ace of spades would be a good card to bet or hand to bet. So with ace 3 suited, I'm thinking this is a good spot to 4-bet. My note on him said 3 bets, king 5 offsuit in the big blind. So all of a sudden I'm like, okay, this is a really good spot to 4-bet. The reason I min-raised was because the big blind was a short stacker. And I like to mix it up to min-raising versus short stackers. I think it's a little more profitable. And he instantly folds. So I make a note on it, as you can see. Table 1, just opening a good hand, continuing to quick fold everywhere else, really. This is the slowest rush poker ever gets, I think. I think I could have done 4 tables, but I wasn't really sure what it would be like to commentate on it and if it'd be just kind of too hurried. So with ace-9 offsuit, I'm opening just a little bit light here, using the same overall principle that I can apply more aggression because it's the very first hand at the table and the last one, consequently. So that I guess that means that I'm opening slightly looser in all spots, but really I'm going to be a lot looser on the cutoff and the button, and looser 3-betting in the cutoff, button, small blind, and big blind. And that's how I'm going to basically adjust. On table 1, I have c-bet, and I get called. With the turn pairing the low card, I'm always firing over pairs here, so I'm just going to fire here for the same reason that I could have an overpair pretty easily, and I think he's going to give up a lot of his middle pair type hands, which is, I think, a big part of his range there. And he does fold. Aces, certainly going to 3-bet this. King 9 suited, I think, is a close spot, but I think I like to fold it here. Maybe not. Yeah. Nine Jack is definitely worth an open. One thing that I'm not going to do, that I might do at other stakes, like at 5-10, I might open some suited connectors in early position. I think it's going to be better to open higher cards rather than like 6-7 suited. I'd rather have like Queen Jack suited or King Jack suited. I think those hands are going to have more value in early position at rush poker and I think a hand like 6-7 suited is going to be actually completely unplayable. I think low cards are going to get you killed, especially out of position in this kind of fast-paced game or whatever you want to call it. And on table 1, I like to 4-bet Jack 9 suited. There's a little bit of merit in calling, but I think just the 4-bet bluff is just going to work a ton of the time. and people really aren't going to react to it very well. On table 3, 10-8 suited. This is a good hand to bluff with. Good hand to 3-bet bluff, especially in this spot. I'd also open it on the button. I'm making it 12. I don't really know what I should make it. 10, 11, 12. I think 11 or 12 is both fine. Are both fine. Just so long as you're constantly 3-betting hands like this, there's really no reason not to 3-bet here. It's the very first hand. According to these guys, I haven't 3-bet at all yet. So I think it's just a little, there's no reason to 3-bet this sometimes. Whereas if you were playing a regular full ring game, you might 3-bet it sometimes and fold it other times and call sometimes. But really here, I think just applying the pressure right away, pretty much every time, gonna maximize the value. On this flop, it's pretty, mundane. A queen will call me, but really that's it. If they flop the set, they're gonna play back at me. So I make a $25 bet into a $35 pot. I think, anywhere between 23 and 27 is fine for that kind of situation. So I get cold called by this guy. We're kind of deep, and then this guy calls as well on table 2. Flop top set, even though it's 3 flush, I'm always getting the money in a 3-bet pot here. Definitely could be up, against the ace of spades or lower set or just like aces or kings even. So it's worth it to just not really slow play. I'm just going to lead right out into him. 6-4 suited. It's these are low cards, and I do think high cards are stronger than low cards in rush poker and in low stakes poker really in general. But with someone limping under the gun, I really just can't help myself. I think it's a profitable situation, and I'm going to be able to play pretty aggressively against them, and they fold right away. So that really goes to show that they're limping too often, which you'll see a lot at these stakes. With the early position limp and the min raise from this guy, I'm not really getting a lot of strength from him. I think his hand's just generally really weak. So I'm just going to apply a lot of pressure against his pretty much obviously weak hand and see what happens, and I get a fold right away. That's the kind of situation where just because of his pre-flop min raise, I'm pretty likely to like double barrel a lot of different board textures just to get him off of some like middle pair or ace like jack type hand or something like that. Opening all ace-x type hands on the button, obviously. And I think again with the suited Broadway cards, I think you're gonna have a lot more strength than you might usually. So I'm gonna open Jack 10 suited pretty much from any position. I think all suited Broadway really you can almost open from any position in this game. It'll be a little loose in some situations, but I think it'd be okay to just throw it into the mix if you feel comfortable. Playing post flop out of position and just kind of barreling a few times. On table 1, I double barrel, which I think is fine. I think I know this guy from other tables or something, but I don't really believe this check raise. If I had a stronger hand, I think I'd just ship it in. But with this hand, I really can't do much. So I just basically have to muck. And the king on the turn on table 2 is obviously just a great card to barrel. I still have flush draw, plenty of outs. It's a really good spot to barrel. Even though my note on him really isn't that strong, but I just make it anyways. Everyone folds to the king turn sometimes, so it's really not saying much. On table 3, I like to just kind of lead into 2 people. I have a backdoor straight and flush draws, and I'm just kind of expecting to take the pot down a fair bit at a time. Table 2, I isolate raise 2 people with queen 10 offsuit. I'm just going to kind of pot control it with middle pair here. I think they're going to play pretty straightforward and weak, and I think most of the time I just have a huge lead in the hand. So when he leads $10, it's like half pot. Not really getting a lot of strength from it, and I'm definitely going to be, kind of looking to get to showdown with my hand. I'm not trying to put a lot of money in or anything. My kicker is not that great, but I don't really see him value betting a stronger queen or even having a stronger queen. So looking at this river bet, which is a little more than half pot, I'm thinking, like, what kind of hands can this person really have that they've limped with and then called a raise with? I'm like, hands like King Jack and stuff, I don't know, they don't make a lot of sense to me. Um, I don't think it's a queen like with a bigger kicker, so I don't think he's merging in any sense. Which kind of means like it's only really pocket fours, pocket eights might be raising, pocket sixes. I don't know if they bet the turn. I really don't. I'm just generally confused about his range, and that leans me to call. Um, which even though my technical read here is I guess incorrect, um, as I stew this over in my head. He shows ace jack, so technically he could have a king there, but with his bet sizing and everything, I think there was just enough reason for with his sizing and being weaker that I can just assume that he has a weak hand, and my hand is stronger than a weak hand. It's a mediocre hand. It's not really very strong, but it's strong enough to think that I might have him beat. So I definitely pull up the note box on him right away because I want to note that he limp calls ace jack offsuit out of position and that he leads half pot with weak hands, as like weak bluffs kind of. And so that's exactly what I put here in my notes as I lose the player and move on to other hands. Maybe I'll never see him again. I don't know. This I think about four betting, cold four betting wouldn't be crazy there. It's just it's maybe a little crazy. So on table 3, I flop trips and I elect to check as a slow play. I'm out of position and there's really not much he can have. So I'm just kind of like hoping that he'll take a stab at it or that he'll hit on the turn or something like that. So I lead the ace turn, which I think is a great card to lead. I think he'll call with a ton of aces. When he min raises, I'm like thinking to myself, all right, well if he has an ace and he's min raised, maybe I can 3-bet and get some value out of him. Then I'm thinking, well, 3-bet looks pretty strong. That might lose him. I'm also thinking if he has a queen and he's elected to check back and raise the turn, uh, I'm not really sure if my kicker beats other queen kickers. Now, there's not a lot of hands left that he can have. There's only the queen of diamonds and like a jack, a 10, a king, and ace maybe, and 9 and an 8. So there's actually literally 8 combinations of queen X type hands that he can have. I have maybe one of them beat, maybe 2 of them beat, um, and then thinking about his entire range, there's 50 other combinations of hands that he could be min raising here with. So I think my best play is to kind of just like maybe let him bet his ace for value and just kind of call down, kind of become a little passive in the situation, and maybe he'll try and bluff or turn his hand into a bluff or make some kind of donkish play. Already the turn min raise is kind of throwing me as a donkish play, so I like to just call. There's merit for really doing raising, calling and leading the river. I think would be fine. Calling and check raising the river even might work a little bit. And here I'm just looking. It depends on his bet sizing. If he bets 26, I'll probably just call. If he bets 12, I'm gonna make it 40 or 36 or something, and elect to get value out of maybe an ace or a weaker queen or something like that. But he checks back, and he turns out he just has king jack high. So definitely gonna pull up his notes. Hopefully I do, and make a note that he min raised the gut shot on the turn for really no reason at all. And yeah, I do get the box up there and do that. On table 1, I've flopped a set and am looking to extract value, pretty much just straight out of an ace. I raised and he 3-bet pre-flop, I believe, and we're pretty deep, so I'm just going to check raise the flop and hope that he gets stubborn with ace king and calls. I might not check raise barrel because I think that looks pretty strong, and even ace king, ace queen I have a hard time playing back at that. So I might check raise, then like check call or check raise again, depending on kind of stack sizes and timing tells. But I think definitely the flop check raise here is pretty solid. I do expect some folds on the flop. Table 2, I am c-betting my bottom pair open and straight draw. The turn brings a 3 flush and an over to the board. I think it's a really good card to kind of barrel him off of some mediocre hands. Sometimes I will be kind of betting into a really strong hand there, so I might not bet the river. I might just give up, unless I make my straight. But he does fold the turn, and once again, I win another pot without showdown, which is the real theme, I think, here in the rush poker setting. And with the set of twos, he did fold to my check raise. On table 3, I'm really not buying this. He raised and I 3-bet pre-flop. We're deep. I really think that making a play here would be great. The thing is, I could just see making it like 72 and then getting called and then going, well, I have jack high, no pair, no draw. What do I do now? So I think that I would make a semi bluff here with a lot of different hands, like the king of clubs. I think I would raise any pair like 5x, 2x, maybe like a maybe even ace 3 offsuit, something that has maybe a little bit more showdown value than complete garbage, which is really what I have at this point. I would like to make some sort of decent sized 3-bet and basically look to get stacks, or to fake look to get stacks in and then fold if he shoves. Um, like if I had like even a middle club, I think making a 3-bet would be decent. Like 5-6 with a 6 of clubs would be a fine spot to make a 3-bet here and then fold to a shove. Just, out of the complete range of hands, I think he's just kind of BSing himself, or he has like pocket sevens, pocket sixes here, and he's like, well, I'll just see what this does. He's not really making a completely intelligent play. Sometimes he will be slow playing the nuts, or, fast playing the nuts, whatever you want to call it, but it's really just really hard to have the nuts here in a 3-bet pot, so I'm just really not giving him a ton of credit, but he has caught me with the complete bottom of my range, and I'm just going to give it up, which you have to do sometimes, unfortunately. So deep stacked with queens. Again, I'm not going for really slow playing. Just gonna try and inflate the pot, and exploit people's kind of pre-flop poor pre-flop play. Blah. On table 2, I call with sevens, and the flop isn't horrible for me. It's not great either. I think it's just worth it here to see at least a turn card. I could consider turning my hand into a bluff on some turn cards, like this one even. Or I can go for showdown value. At this point, I'm really not believing that my hand is good. When he checks the turn of the king, I have to imagine he kind of has like ace 10 or something like that, and he's kind of pot controlling with a hand that has me beat. But at the same time, I'm not really ready to turn my hand into a bluff. I'm gonna try and go to showdown and see what happens. Now with this river, I just completely have to assume I'm beat. He has aces, and it's definitely worth a note that he played it really passively. And I think I could have bet the turn and the river and gotten him off of that hand, but I didn't. So maybe I missed an opportunity. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I just missed an opportunity is all that I could say. On table 1, I call and under the gun raise in the big blind with pocket tens. This is the one time where I am not going to be playing super fast and loose. It's in the blinds to early position. I think out of position, you're going to have a really tough time with 3-betting and playing tens, jacks, queens, and even like ace king and ace queen really fast because you're out of position and because their hand range already starts kind of tight when they open in early position. So it's just, I think, a little bit better, a little bit safer maybe, a little bit more optimal to play a little bit passively out of position to the early and maybe even middle position raises. With the king on the river, some people might lead here, they might check call. Don't really have any reads on my opponent, and I'm just gonna give him credit for being capable of value betting a king and being slightly capable of bluffing. I just think that most people are going to be value betting here. On table 2, sorry I missed this. Let's rewind it. It's a really funny spot. So I get 3-bet from the big blind, who's squeezing my raise and someone's call. I have a king in my hand, and we're over 100 big blinds deep. I think this is a really good spot to just make a 4-bet. So I like to make it 27, which it may be a little small. Maybe I could go 28 or 30. And he calls, which obviously means I flop trips. Now this is where it gets really weird. I expect them to have a range of jacks, tens, queens, kings, aces, ace king, and ace queen when he calls this. When he checks the flop, or I think he's going to check the flop with almost his entire range here. Uh, and I'm definitely going to be betting just straight up for value. Um, and I'm looking to, pretty much shovel the money in on, like, I think on on any deuce or something. I think he just won't believe me and he'll stack off. But things are getting a little more interesting as the pot size or our stack size and this turn card and everything. So the way I see it, I've either turned like a complete, or this card is both a scare card for most of his hands, or by now he either has queens full or kings full and has me completely crushed. If he had, I don't think he has the ace high flush ever, and I don't think jacks tens are ever going along with his hand. Ace queen might even fold to a river or a turn shove here. So really, what is it that I can hope to get value out of if he checks and I shove? The only hand is aces, and I don't even. I mean, at this point he'll probably stack aces, but other than that, like aces or ace king maybe, but ace king is becoming less and less likely by the way the hand played out on the flop. So the way I see it, I need to get my value in on the river and hope that he decides to either lead all in or turn his hand into a bluff or just kind of do something donkish or bet a weaker hand for value. Really a really interesting spot because his range is kind of it's kind of strong, but my hand is really strong as well, so it's kind of interesting spot. So the river brings a four flush. At this point, I have to hope maybe he has like ace queen, ace of hearts, or something like that. If he has tens and jacks, he's gonna fold anyways. So I just have to ship the money in and see if I can get value from his hand. I'm pretty sure he folds here, but definitely gonna make a note on him calling the four bet out of position. I would bet money that his hand was like jacks or something there. Table one, I'm gonna isolate raise. I think here. Uh, someone limps middle position. I timed out. Otherwise, I would have isolate raised. And on table two, again with the suited Broadway, I'm going to be playing a little bit more frequently than I would in regular games. Definitely lots of pausing the video. This is going to be a pretty long video. Looking at, we're just over halfway really, and we've already got almost an hour's worth of footage. We'll see then what we can do. Maybe we'll just keep it rolling and talk and go. King Jack, not the best hand to 3-bet, even with these stacks, but again, they don't know who I am, and I'm going to be able to play this pretty aggressively post-flop. This is definitely an interesting spot where I c-bet, but, I think my hand's good here a lot. If he calls or raises, I'm going to slow down a little bit, but I'm going to proceed as if my hand was really the best hand until kind of unless he really turned up the aggression or something like that. With nines, definitely opening, folding everything else. Jack 10 suited is going to be one of these hands where sometimes I might 3-bet this out of the blinds to like a late position raiser or something like that. But here I would pretty much always 3-bet it out of the blinds, like a late position raiser, or maybe even an early position raiser, like mid position raiser, depending on stack sizes and stuff. Table one, I c-bet the flop. I think it's best to c-bet with nines here, even though it's ace high. I think your hand's a little vulnerable and it's the best hand most of the time. I'm putting in a tough spot on the river. I think folding or calling here could either could be good depending on what you think of your opponent. Because his stack is kind of bigger, I assume that he's actually got an ace more often, and I like to muck it. On table three, I isolate raised out of position with Jack 10 suited, and then c-bet my open and straight flush draw. This is kind of funny. He ships all in, which I usually would be hesitant to call, but I definitely look him up, and he has complete garbage, which is hilarious, and I take down a huge pot with Jack High. I was actually expecting him to suck out somehow, but luckily my Jack High held, and I made a big fat note on him because that guy's clearly horrible. And I rolled on the floor laughing. So with 10 jack offsuit, this might be a spot where I might 3-bet instead of flat call. I think it's going to apply a lot of pressure on his middle low pairs and stuff like that. And he's going to have a hard time playing. He's going to call a fair bit here out of position, and I'm going to be ready to steal the pot from him post. This is an interesting spot on Adrenaline where I get 3-bet and we're pretty deep. I think there's some merit in 4-betting, but I do think I get called. I think that 4-bet gets called a fair bit, and that's why I elected to just muck. I think it's a little bit easier to play the hand if I just fold, and I'm not, certain that he's making a pure bluff there anyways. So, his range should be a little bit tighter than normal in that spot, so I'm just going to give him credit. Here it folds to me with Jack 10. I've been making it 4 in the small blind rather than 3. It's a debatable, depends on who you are, what your opponent's stack sizes are, stuff like that. I flop a gut shot on table 2, and I'm just going to lead out with it. The guy limped, so I think there's a lot of times I'll take down the pot. On table 1, my opponent check called the flop, then checked the turn. I think the best way to get a lot of value out of like a 7-8 or like mid strength hand is to check back the turn and get my value on the river, kind of by like I give the essential idea, oh, I give up, I didn't really have a hand, I just bet the flop for no reason, and then I think that's going to create a lot of value for me on the river. And that's why here when I bet 10 and I get check min raised, I just have to look it up. I have top pair and I'm just really not believing him. He has Jack 6 suited, which means that he check called the flop with a backdoor flush draw and really nothing else. So really, even though my call didn't work out for me, I'm happy to know that this guy is horrible. So I just make a note on how he played that hand and move on. On table 2, obviously going to get an ace-king here versus, short stacker. Really nothing else to say but ship it in. And I kind of, after seeing that, he has queens, I just assumed that he could be a good short stacker. Because I only have a one-hand sample, and I'm going to be having a lot of one-hand samples, so I have to kind of base a lot of decisions off of one sample. On table 3, I make a really sexy 3-bet. This is definitely a squeeze play where, it's no play like this is going to work every time, but my hand should look really strong here. And I think with Moron being deep with me, I think he might call. He'll fold a fair bit, and he'll call, and that's fine. I'm gonna bet a lot of flops and take it down then. Table 2, I flop open and straight draw, and I'm really just never folding. I turn a flush draw, and my opponent just ships in for a slightly over pot. I don't really see a lot of strength in his hand, so I think maybe I have a 7 as an out or something. I'm just calling maybe a little bit gambly here, but I mean, if you look at my equity, I'm nearly 40%, so I think I'm getting like odds here. It's close. I don't know if this is the right call or not. I'll pause the video, run some math. Let's do that real fast. Alright, so here I have PokerStove open, and I have my Google document, which I call pot odds, which I made basically to help calculate pot odds. I have some previous hands here and stuff that just kind of help with the pot odds. I'm going to move it aside for a second just so we can see the pot size here. I'm actually going to shrink it up. So first thing I'm going to do is calculate immediate pot odds, which is pretty simple. The pot size equals 15.9 plus 10, which is $25.90. The amount to call is $15.90. Our pot odds are 38. We need 38% equity to call this shove. I made a random kind of range for him, but it turns out I'm 39.7 versus this random range. I don't think I'm too far off here. I gave him some suited connectors, some offsuit connectors, all pocket pairs between 2s and 8s, a lot of suited aces, like 2-3, or ace-3, ace-2, ace-4, then some random just high cards that really haven't paired, and that one, yeah. Let's see, now I think it'll even be higher. So yeah, I think I'm just really not getting a lot of strength from him. So I think the call is okay. It's certainly very marginal. If I thought he was a better player or something, if I thought he was a better player, I it'd be tough to say. I mean, he's short stacking, and he check called the flop and then open shoved the turn. I have to assume he's just a weaker player, and that's the way it goes. So here I am. We'll just make a note of it. Calling a short stack open overbet shove with Owen straight flush draw. And it was a good call. So yeah, I started this Google Doc. You guys could do the same if you wanted. Not too hard. You just make an equation on the left-hand side, which looks pretty much like this. This over this plus this. Sorry, this square over both squares, in quotation marks. So yeah, we'll get back to the hands then. And of course, using those tools like Poker Stove and pot odds and fold equity calculations, really going to improve your game. It's really the best way to study. Between that and just talking over hands with people, it's really the only way to go. So here I'm in an interesting spot. He bet the flop and I called, and it went check check on the turn, and then he's bet this river. So really, I have to assume that he doesn't have 7-8 nearly ever here. If he has, he doesn't have, actually, yeah, I think he check called the flop and then bet the river, right? Let's actually rewind it, sorry. Just to be certain. And my 3-bet here with Queen 8 suited did not work, which is fine. So yeah, he check called the flop. That's what we just saw. Sorry. Check. Okay, he bet kind of weakly on the flop, and I called. Now, wait. What's going on here? He bet the turn. It went check, check, check around the flop. Yeah. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so we checked around the flop. Definitely some merit in betting and checking this this flop with middle pair. I like to check back and just, see a free turn card and stuff. When he bets the turn, I'm really putting him on a hand like kings, queens, total air, some weaker pairs, and really not much else. King, queen, queen, jack. So when he bets the river, I'm really kind of shocked to see that he would do something like that, because his hand really isn't making a lot of sense. I'm actually expecting him to check fold this river a ton. So the river bet itself, maybe it means he slow played a set, he turned a set. But most of the time, it could just be a weak ace or just a complete bluff altogether. So I elect to just kind of turn my hand into a bluff. I think it's really hard for him to do anything but either call or fold to this raise. And I make a pretty biggish sized raise. Really just trying to get him off of like ace-5 offsuit or something like that. Or kings or queens. I don't really think... I don't know if he bets those, but it seems like just the way the hand went down is kind of funky. He insta-ships over, and I just have to muck my hand. But, I mean, is he really saying that he has 7-8? Because isn't that really the only hand he would shove here with? Wouldn't you just flat most of the time? It's really tough to say. So, I just muck it and move on. But I didn't really make a good note on him either. But I'm a little skeptical of what he had there. I'm not really sure. Maybe it was aces. Maybe it was top set. Not sure. Table 1, I'm just going to 3-bet it up again. Keep the pressure on in position. Table 3, opening king, queen suited is fine. On table 2, I think 3-betting here. I know Jordan kicks. I think they're a good player. I think 3-betting here is going to put them in really tough spots. We're 250 big blinds deep. Theoretically, you should be tough to play against and have a wide 3-betting range. On table 1, I 3-bet and got called, and my opponent donk led the flop. Not really sure what to make of it here. I could raise and then call off, but I think seeing the turn card and how he reacts will really give me clear-cut answer to his hand strength. And I have position, so I like to just call, try and hit my draw, and look to steal based on his action. So when he checks, I'm like, all right, well, looks like this guy has like sevens, eights, nines, and he just did something kind of funky. So I'm just gonna try and bet him off those hands. But I'm also not looking to bet call off here. Um, I think that'd be a little incorrect. I guess I could bet 40 and then call off 50. We could look at pot odds there. The pot size would be, it would be 47.05. Gotta get the equal sign in there. Plus, if I bet 40, plus it would be another 52, plus another, it would be 92.10 if he shoved all it. And it would be 52 to call. So yeah, I'd have to have at least 22% equity. If I bet 40, I guess betting 40 and calling it off might be the best thing to do here, actually. I think my draw is about 25% equity. I mean, you could look it up. You could have sets and stuff. It could be slightly less. But I'd estimate it between 22 and 25%. But it just seems like if he's check raising the turn, actually, I might have closer to 20%. So even betting 40 might not get him to call off, or might not get me the correct odds. And it sucked to bet 40 and then half to fold because I was like half a percent off on making the correct call. And you can't just make a call because you have a flush draw. Even if it's slightly minus EV, you still shouldn't make it. I mean, end of story. You should just fold because you're gonna have more money by the end of the day folding than calling. So really, I think just betting smaller, which if I bet, so I bet, what am I going to bet here? Like 30 something, I think. Now, remember, I also think that any real bet here will get him off of any kind of middle pair, any kind of non-ace hand. I think he'll just check fold here. So we'll bring this back up. And now let's change it to 30 plus his shove of 90.1, and that's gonna change that size. And then my amount to call is also gonna be higher. It's gonna be 60.1. All right, so now I think I'm almost it's pretty much a clear fold if you just look at. Let's just give him something really simple. He has ace king. Let's do ace king offsuit. Obviously he'll have a set occasionally, and I have the jack nine of diamonds, and the board is ace of diamonds. It's also interesting he can't have the ace high flush draw, which makes it kind of better for me, I guess. Two diamonds, three clubs. So 19% equity is really not that great, and if he has sets ever, I can't really call a check shove to either bet amount profitably, especially if you consider, the fact that he can have sets. He's not really shoving a lower flush draw. He's never really bluffing. So, yeah, I like betting a little bit smaller than folding to a shove. I think it's better than potting it and then calling a shove when you might not even be really getting the right odds, even when you are really almost trying to price yourself in. So, yeah. I think a lot of people make the mistake of calling a little too, like potting and then calling off there in a spot where they're really not getting good odds. And I make a note on how I played the hand because I think that's really kind of a suspicious way for someone to play a hand. Definitely worth a note. On table 2, I 4-bet bluffed. This guy 3-bet my my isolate raise, and I have a feeling he's going to 3-bet that with a wide range. We're a little bit deep, and it's going to be really tough to play with a lot of those 3-betting hands out of position to my 4-bet. 4-bet the first time. It works every time, and guess what? Every time is the first time in this game. On table 3, again, the low pocket pair giving up on the ace XX board out of position I think is fine. And I open a little loose here from the cutoff with jack 9 offsuit. But I think that's fine just because we're going to be able to play more aggressively than usual. Almost worth a 3-bet there with jack 7 suited, but I elected to muck it. Mainly because he was in early position and the hand was a little weak. Here on table 2, this is a close spot. I have like a 80 big blind stack. I'm kind of deep with 200 big blinds deep with him and about 100 with this guy. Ace 6 suited isn't really the best hand to 3-bet here, but I could just call and see a flop. But I think just applying the pre-flop pressure and trying to get folds is really the best strategy. I'm really pushing that in rush poker, just based on the whole concept of the game, really. That you're playing with a player pool and everyone. Now this gets interesting. So I think if I bet, he's really folding out a ton of hands, and he's calling with a lot of hands that have me beat, and that's really not a good situation to put myself in 200 big blinds deep. So I think the best thing I can do here is check. It's not necessarily a slow play, even though maybe in a technical sense it is. On table 1, I just check back Queen 8 suited. Not really sure if I like that. Maybe I wasn't paying attention or something. I think I could have bet it. Turn to gut shot, I think I'm going to bet that. Hopefully. Now he bets, 3/4 pot when I check to him. I think that's fine. He still has a wide range here. Just kind of playing the hand passively. I'm just going to check to him and see how he reacts on the turn. And when it gets checked through, I'm pretty confident I have the best hand. With this river, I don't really see any reason of betting. If he had 3s, 4s, or 5s, he's calling or raising. And if he has 6s through jacks, he's folding. So really, there's really no reason to bet this. Just check. Hope that maybe he'll turn king queen or something into a bluff. Try and bluff me off of something. And I think that's the best way to really extract value here. Kind of an odd spot, but I think I did the best. Got the most I could. Couldn't really do anything else there with the way the board ran out. If there were other river cards, I think I could bet. And on table 3, 3-bet queens took it down. On table 2, I am going to 3-bet my suited ace jack. Definitely a loose 3-bet. A different kind of play than I usually make in most games. I get called by the short stacker, which I think is fine. I know how to kind of play against him. Now here, it's like debatable whether I want to shove or check or bet and then call off, or bet and then fold. I think betting and then folding would be the worst. I think checking would be okay, as he will likely shove or call a shove decent amount of the time. But for some reason, or I like to just ship it in here and apply the most pressure I can to him, and I think I'm gonna get a fold a decent amount of the time here, and he does fold. I think I had a bad short stacker note on him, so I think that's why I shoved there. It was because it's just a little bit easier than checking back and then maybe making some guesswork on the turn. Table 3, this guy just ships in for 130 big blinds. First thing I do is make a note on that horrible play. There's no merit for doing that ever to a min raise and a call. Ridiculously large. And on both these other tables, I'm set mining essentially. Table 2, getting to an interesting spot. He checks, and I think it's just, once he checks, it's worth a bet to kind of get him off of some mid pairs, low pairs. I don't really know what he would check call or check raise here with. But the turn card is really just bad to bluff, I think. So I basically elect to give up. If the turn card was something else, like a heart, a jack 10, something like that, maybe like an 8-9, something along those lines, I think betting again would be fine. But here with the pairing is 7, I think this is one of the worst turn cards that I could double barrel, so I just give up. This river is kind of interesting because I could try and represent a straight here, but I don't really think I'm going to be repping much if I try and raise this donkish size bet. I think he's just going to be like, bet, call. If he has like ace jack, he'd be like, bet, call. That's kind of what I'm thinking. So I just elect to muck my hand after making a note on him. On table one, I like to open a little light again. I think it's a little questionable actually, but yeah, I'm not trying to bet 435. So at 4.5, just standard C bet takes it down. So it did work out that time. It's a close spot. Queen Jack suited, I'm gonna open. Queen eight suited, definitely too weak under the gun. It's a little suicidal, I think, if you were trying to play a hand like that. Definitely not trying to say you should just start playing hands like that. I think this guy It's Me Nemo is a regular. I've seen him a couple of times now, so I'm just assuming he's a pretty good player. When we're this deep and he's a good player, I think the best play is really check raising the board. I mean, I have to check raise some non-set hands here, really, and uh, I'm gonna try and apply three levels of pressure. I think he's gonna have to. He's gonna be put in a tough spot a ton of the time. If he three bets me, I'm gonna call and play as if his hand was always a set, unless it goes check check on the turn. Then I'd probably bet a river. Um, but there he just folds to the check raise, and I don't really have to deal with other uh, decisions that there could be some tough decisions that come up. But overall, I think and the reason I defended the big blind to his early position open was that we were really deep. Otherwise, I would have for 100 big blinds. I definitely would just muck ace nine suited to under the gun raise. So yeah, I opened queen 10 suited, which is pretty standard. I don't think that hand's really ever a fold in that situation. 6-9 offsuit is like a close open. It's like debatable whether I'd want to open this or just open fold it if it was folded to me on the button. I think I should have made it 3 here with 7-6 suited to the half stack, but maybe I didn't see his stack size in time. And I just muck ace 3 suited there, whereas I did open ace 8 suited in early position. I think that the high card strength between the 3 and the 8 really makes the difference. Sure, you can make straights with ace 3, but that's kind of random. Just making a pair of 8s versus people that are calling with a lot of small to medium pairs versus making a pair of 3s versus the same kind of range. I think the 8 plays a lot better. And here I'm starting to sit out. Get into a really interesting spot in this last hand, actually. Let's take a look. So we're deep, and I'm 4-betting as a bluff. The flop is ace 6-2, rainbow. Or not rainbow, but I have absolutely nothing. He has an ace a decent amount of time here, but he also has some small pocket pairs and some other things. When he check calls a flop, you know, with this turn card, I'm actually thinking, okay, I'll barrel one more time and then maybe shove in on the river. Maybe set it up to try and get him off of ace queen. I don't really think anyone's ever folding ace king, which he certainly could have, but yeah, it's tough to say. I don't think he has like aces very often or sixes or twos, so I think it'd be a decent spot to three barrel, especially any diamond river. When he leads into me, I'm like, oh, this is so good to shove. Oh, it's so also like I'm gonna get snapped by whatever he has. So I think he's repping a decent amount of strength here, and I don't know if he's really doing this with jacks, queens, kings, which are really the only hands I think he folds at this point. So I think about it for a bit and just kind of give up on the hand. Um, yeah, definitely. This is the first tough spot I was really in with all the four betting and kind of crazy monkey plays that I made. That was the toughest spot, and it was folding second pair in a four bet pot. So it really wasn't that tough of a spot when you really say it out loud, I suppose. And I think that's just kind of proof that the players here are a little bit a little bit weaker, tighter, a little bit easier to bully around, play against. And the fact that you're kind of an unknown and this is the first hand that you've played with these people, really going to be able to make it so that they have to believe you till proven otherwise. And since it's so hard for someone to really just have a hand in general, a lot of three betting and a lot of three streets of aggression, wise aggression, not just reckless, useless aggression, but using small amounts of equity and scare cards and all the tactics that Card Runners has been teaching you for a while. Just put those into a slight amount of overdrive, and I think you'll find a lot of success here at the Rush Poker on Full Tilt Poker. All right, this is Six Peppers for CardRunners.com. I'll see you guys at the tables.